with Get Off My Lawn Live. I am your host as usual. And before we get started, let me first say yesterday's show kind of was a bit of a disaster, not because of the subject matter, but because of all the technical difficulties we had. I do apologize for that. We are going to redo that show sometime next couple of weeks because the subject of domestic violence is very important, and we do really want to get that word out and get that message across to folks that if you need help, you should seek out help in regards to that. And we also have realized after having that discussion that there's a lot more to that subject that needs to be discussed because there's various aspects of it that we want to get into too, in terms of how it affects the people involved, how it affects the children involved, how there's more than one type of actual domestic violence, things of that nature. So we want to get into that whole aspect of it, and we're definitely going to do that in future episodes of not only Get Off My Lawn, but also the podcast that I share with Dr. Facey, What the Bucks with Buck. So we will be having those discussions sometime soon. But meanwhile, today, since we have the show, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss a few topics up for discussion. And also, if you have anything to discuss, any comments to make, tell you feel free to jump on in and, you know, send out anything that you have to discuss to the room, and we'll have that discussion as well. So as I go ahead and link everything up here on this end, because we still want to try to get as many people involved in the show as possible. So what I've learned in dealing with some of these technical difficulties is that if you are catching this show from my Get Off My Lawn, my Get Off My Lawn Now podcast, which is what you hear in the background now as I'm cutting it down. Now I'm able to access who's saying what. So even if it shows up here on the Yardbird part of the broadcast, I should pretty much know who is sending the messages. So, like I said, if you're catching this on the Get Off My Lawn podcast page, or if you're catching this on my personal page, I should now be able to distinguish who is there. And also, you can catch this broadcast on YouTube Live, as I am streaming on that right now at the moment as well. So that being said, let's get into the few topics I want to talk about. Basically want to kind of go through some general news type situations, and then I want to kind of have a brief discussion about something else that's come to my radar. So, of course, the main topic today was the stimulus relief package and the update. Now, some of you have leaned on me to kind of keep you abreast as to what's the latest in the issue because you're busy and there's so many different moving parts to this thing. It's kind of hard to keep up with it all with a couple of minutes of news bites. So here's where we're at the moment. Right now, they're still in the process of trying to work out a deal for this next round of stimulus package. Now, keep in mind, we've pretty much ascertained that the coronavirus situation is going to go on past the end of this year and probably into a good part of next year. So what they're trying to do is make it to where they don't have to constantly keep coming back and making more and more packages. That being said, they're probably going to have to make more and more packages. I say ultimately they'll have to do this one. They'll have to do another one for the beginning of next year. And they'll have to do an after the fact one to kind of get us all back up to evenville. So that being said, the problem, of course, is that the worst thing that could have happened is that we got 2020, we got an election year, we got the coronavirus, and then we got the division among people of color. And all these things coincide with what's going on with everything else. So, of course, the problem now is that because it's an election year and the election is a couple weeks away, and people are more concerned about keeping their jobs than the needs of the people, we have all these different camps and factions trying to decide what's in the best interest of them, not necessarily their constituents, but them. So problem one is that we have three different people, well, actually have four different factions working this thing out. We got the Congress, which of course consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and they have varying opinions on how they want to do this. The Democrats pretty much have control of the House of Representatives, so their part of the plan is the part that which everything is kind of being framework around. They initially, as we know, signed the HEROES Act, which was months ago, that covered all these things and then some. They, of course, now had to chop and chop and chop to try to get to a plan where the other half of the aisle, the Republicans, will actually support and pass. From what we're being told today, the Democrats in the House and the president's people, because now there's another faction, but basically the people that he sent to work with the House of Representatives to come up with a plan, they are supposedly very close to some type of resolution in regards to this thing. So right now they're basically saying we got to the end of the week to try to pass this in time before the election, because keep in mind they usually take that last week or so off to go campaign in the state that they come from to try to get those last votes so they can keep the job. So there's that. Meanwhile, the president, who basically is starting to get in dire need of something to give him a boost, because of course all the reports is that he's losing in a lot of these early elections. He basically wants to do something that's going to make a major push to show, look what I did, look what I made happen. Consider this as you figure out who to vote for. So of course he wants this package to go through because he wants the economy to keep going. And the reports are that more and more unemployment is going, and of course there's a growth in the virus, which we'll talk about in a moment. So he's pushing on his end to make it happen. So we got those two factions, the House of Representatives and the president's people. Then we got the Senate. And of course, we have the Democrats in the Senate that's pretty much going to go along with whatever the Republicans, with whatever the House of Representatives people come up with, and they're going to agree with that. They're pretty much set. The problem now is the Republicans. And it really boils down to the Republicans that don't give a damn because they've been in office forever and they feel like they'll be there forever. And Republicans that's kind of concerned about their job security, particularly those who are in those states where it's kind of marginal, and them not coming through on this coronavirus package might be the last straw that causes them to lose their job. You are about to lose your job. You are about to lose your job. And no, they do not want that. They don't want that at all. So the problem now is that they are having trouble between the midst of those people trying to figure out whether they should approve whatever gets approved through the other two factions, or if they want to go with a whole different route. Now, Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Republican Senate, wanted to pass the skinny $500 million version of the package today. That was a no-go. That was a no-go because in the end, it only mainly covered money for some of the testing and most of the bailout money for some of the airlines and things of that nature. They don't really want to spend any extra money on anything else. So that $500 million did not cover an extra $1,200 for people in terms of the stimulus package money. It didn't cover any of the unemployment. It didn't cover any of the not much of the small loans for people that need loans still for their businesses. It mainly covered the major players in the deal. So before they could even pull that foolishness out in the Senate, the Democrats blocked that today, and that was that. So that led to that. Now, bottom line is they're trying to get this done sometime between now and Friday. It's looking thin. Then, considering whoever ends up winning the election, we have the lame duck session to where between November and January, they try to work out something. And then after that, there's the after election. A lot of people can't wait that long. There's a lot of people on very, very thin ground right now. They're already behind on the bills. They're behind on the mortgage. They're behind on all this. And most of the Democrat stimulus package covers a lot of these things that will be extremely helpful now. And the key thing in this that Nancy Pelosi announced today is that their part of the stimulus package that they want to get approved is retroactive. Retroactive, which basically means that when they cut everything off on August 1st and charge the enhanced unemployment benefits and what have you, they want to set it up to where from that point, which is August 1st to the present, you get some type of additional money in addition to whatever they provide for between now and what's reported to be the end of January. So say that, okay, keep in mind they had the small inkling thing that the president threw out that provided a few extra $100 for those few weeks. They probably would add to that. So say if you got 300 and the plan they approve is for the 600 enhanced, you get an extra 300 to make up for what didn't you didn't get those other weeks in August and September and October as well, obviously. And then they'll even it back out for November, December, and probably January. So not only would you get the stimulus money, which is the $1,200, you would also get the extra money if you're getting unemployment benefits. And even if you got them at that point and you're working now, you still would get the back pay from that. Or basically you would get all that extra back pay plus what you would get in addition to that. Then also that also allows the states to increase the weeks of unemployment that you get. Because most states, they pretty much have set you up for 26 to 39 weeks. This bill would give them the money necessary to get the state's money so they can increase it however long they need to. Because clearly, some of these people will be unemployed until we get to the vaccine, whenever that's going to be. And they need to make account for that. So that's the latest on that. So, see, there's no thought so far on that topic. Let's go to the next one. Next thing we'll discuss is the latest on the COVID-19. Now, of course, if you're watching the news, you see all the reports that the virus, for the most part, is increasing in every state in the nation. But it's also increasing in every major nation in the world. They're all having an uptick of the virus. And the main two reasons seem to be because, one, people have become lax in what people have been told in terms of keeping the virus settled or keeping the countdown, which is the wearing of the PPE and the social distancing. At this point, 9 months in, some people either feel like, well, I haven't got it now, I'm not going to worry about it. Or there's also the people that feel like, amazingly enough, and I've talked to a couple of them the last few days, that this is still some type of hoax and is very overblown and what have you. My personal opinion is, not only is it not overblown, it's not blown enough. In other words, there's a faction of people out there who I think have had the virus at some point or may even have it now, but are afraid to even say anything about it because of what backlash and misunderstanding comes from people who say they have it. And then, of course, this is other faction, what I discussed with a family member today, of people who have had the virus, and because they've had it, they feel like they're immune for life. So at this point, they could care less about wearing a mask. I already had the virus. I'm good. But again, you forget the two major points that people are constantly making. One, even if you're good or you're not concerned about if you get sick or not, you still have to consider your fellow man. And if and keep in mind, there's still those few people, those outliers who, if you go do a YouTube search, Google search, you'll find somebody be like, this mask stuff ain't important. It's worse if you wear the mask and what have you. There's a couple of those people out there that have that. And if you choose to believe that, so be it. But for the most part, most other major epidemiologists and what have you have come to the same conclusion. It is an issue, and wearing the mask does help it greatly. Hey, what's going on? Got a comment. Good evening, Amy. How are you? Just sitting here talking about the virus and whatnot. Chime in if you like. But in the end, people, the problem becomes that we need to start heeding the warnings, because clearly these people seem to have a better grasp on what's really going on than what these other folks do. And it's starting to really become a situation where, okay, I'm not wearing the mask. I don't care what you say. I don't care what happens. Forget it. Or there's people like myself that saying, I'm not messing with none of y'all. Clearly, it's something going on. 220,000 people have died here. Over 1 million. One have died all over the world. I don't know about y'all, but I take that serious. If all those people have died in less than 9 months from one particular disease, it's a disease. It's a problem. You might want to pay attention. And again, as most of the populated part of the world gets to be in a situation where it's about to be cold in that part of the world, they're saying that it's going to get worse. And from the numbers of the last 3-4 weeks, we see it's getting worse. Remember, there's 8 million cases that have been reported. That's just the ones that's been reported. I saw one person today on CNN, and yes, I know how some of y'all feel about CNN, saying that some of us feel about Fox News and what have you. But this person basically said that, truthfully, maybe 10 to 15% of the United States have had COVID at some point or have it now, and it's just not reported because your symptoms are mild or your symptoms don't exist, and those people either have had it and it's passed, or they're just not going to get tested because they refuse to get tested, period. So you still have all those people to contend with. It would be a lot easier if we could just be like, okay, this is how we know people get sick. The eyes get pink like pink eye. You see a person with pink eye, okay, you might have it. Let me stay away from you. If you get the blotchy skin like the measles, okay, you got them blotches. Let me stay away from you. If you see someone who has the little pox on the face, okay, you got the pox. I see you probably got it. Let me stay away from you. But unfortunately, this particular illness is not like that. Everybody, you can't tell if they have it or not. Some people, they will have it and they will be completely fine. No symptoms, no nothing. It's breezy, breezy, boom. Some people are having, they may just have a slight cold or fever for a couple of days and be fine. Again, yes, the vast majority of everyone who contracts the virus will ultimately be okay. But for that small percentile, this can be very lethal. And we have to be mindful of them. We have to consider them and what's going on in this. So, however you personally feel about it, let's try to look at it from the standpoint that this ain't just about you. It's about the people around you. Have some respect for them. And unless you are epidemiologist, you can sit here and show me all the charts or whatnot that show that all of everybody else that supposedly knows better knows no better, and you convince me that in the end you're right and the rest of them are wrong. I'm going with the majority on this one. The majority says bad, wear the mask, social distance. I'm going with that plan right now. Amy's got several things to say on the subject. Let's see what she's talking about here. She says, I keep saying that if you don't believe in this virus, fine, whatever. Just don't be rude to everybody else, especially store employees trying to enforce policy. Absolutely, Amy, because it's so ridiculous. Like every other day now, there's a story about somebody's coming to the store where they know that's the policy. You know without a shadow of a doubt that's the policy, but yet you still want to go in there and try to prove a point, go viral, whatever the case may be. When you know that's the law of the land for the most part. Most of the major outlets are enforcing you to wear a mask when you come in the store. They don't want to risk the lawsuit. They don't want to be in that bad publicity where like, we didn't make them wear the mask and that's it. Here locally, again, I try to go out as little as possible, but every now and then I need to go to the store for whatever. Most of the places, yes, they're enforcing it and it's all good. But some places you go into and it's like, dude, you know what it is. Dude, you know what it is. But yet that store person may not say nothing because they don't want the smoke, or the other person just feel like being testy and they go with it and dare you to say something. Like it's a badge of honor to get in an argument about it. It's crazy to me. All right, Amy. Yes, I'm glad you're doing well. Thank you. I'm doing pretty good too today. I'm afraid the virus mutation is out of control soon. And that's another thing people need to understand. Viruses mutate. Do your research, people. Look it up. Think about it. For all of y'all that think it's just like a strong version of the flu, you can get the flu more than once. You know that, right? There are some reports, and it's not been reported a lot at this point, but there are reports of other people contracting the virus more than once. More than once. And that's something you need to be mindful of too. Because if it's this contagious now, if people actually start contracting it more than once, on addition to the people that's getting it for the first time, that's really going to make it super spread. Because think about it. For a person to get the virus a second time, that means you had the antibodies at one point. At some point, they died down, or perhaps that virus became stronger the second time and overtook whatever antibodies was in your system. It's something to think about. Amy goes on. The CDC just changed their contact guidelines. Now it's contact with a person for a total of 15 minutes, not consistent within a 24-hour period. Yes, I saw that report on ABC World News Tonight as well, Amy. Basically, what Amy is saying is that it doesn't take for you to be around a person very long for you to possibly get the virus from what the studies are doing. Because keep in mind, they're constantly doing studies on this thing because we're still trying to gain an understanding what all encompasses this virus. It's still things about it that's new. And because of that, they're trying to take the safest measures possible so that we don't get in a situation where we have all this going on and then suddenly something new with it happens and we're not aware or we weren't ready for it. Okay, going into a place without a mask could literally make you go viral. Yes, it can, because like I said, I feel like some people are seeking this out because we've become a society that I want to be on camera. Some people, I think, mindfully going to these places thinking, okay, if somebody say something to me, I'm gonna act a flipping fool, and in turn, I'm gonna go viral, and I'm gonna get the good likes and the bad likes, and people gonna know my name. Because for some people, being famous is a thing. It's something they aspire to. Kind of crazy to me, actually. I digress. The flu mutates each year, which is why we need a yearly flu shot, which is based on the previous year's strain of flu virus. Absolutely right. Amy, obviously, this person has been doing a lot of reading and stuff herself. And of course, that's right. Remember, we get a yearly flu shot. And people ask, okay, if I got it last year, why do you need to get it this year? Because apparently the flu is type is something that constantly mutates. There's different strains of it. Remember, this is COVID-19 we're dealing with. Name COVID-19 not because they just pulled 19 out the blue. That means there's been 18 other coronaviruses also. It's just this particular strain of it is more deadly and more contagious than the previous ones. And who's to say that while we sit here, COVID 20 or 21 might be manifesting itself somewhere. Don't want to put the boogeyman fear in you like that, but something to think about. So anyway, like I said, the bottom line is the cases are going up, the hospitalizations are going up, the deaths are going up. And we need to be mindful of this. So before it gets too late, before we get to the next part of the super spreader events, because a lot of these football teams are starting to have fans in the stand. A lot of the colleges are Big Ten starting up this weekend. And all these places are getting multiple groups together. And we know from previous things that some of these things are super spreader events that cause hundreds of people at a time to eventually get the virus. As a matter of fact, University of Michigan has shut down the campus pretty much for the next 2 weeks and put everybody in a stay in place order because several hundred positive cases have come in the last few weeks there, primarily from super spreader events like off-campus parties and what have you. So it's out here, folks. It exists. It's for real. I know people who have died. People that were very close to me, in fact. Please start taking this more seriously if you're not. And if you're just not sure, just like I'm sitting here in front of my computer screen, just like I have a phone here, I had the means to look stuff up. You can do the same. And if after you do all your research, you come up with something different and it's something valid and it's something you want to contradict me with, by all means, come on the show. Let's kick it. Let's talk about it. If you could convince me, like I said, I'm a reasonable person. I could be open-minded about it. If what you find is more competent than the things I've read and you had a discussion, I toss my mask out like, okay, you right, I'm wrong. Let's go with it. But I don't like your chances myself. Let's move on. Okay, the next thing we will discuss, folks, is the latest on the Breonna Taylor case. Now, what we have found out is that the Kentucky Supreme Court has ruled that they need to reopen the files. And they also need to let the people that were on the grand jury speak out as to what happened during that part of the grand jury case. And one of them has come out and he has said, among other things, that when it came to the charges against the officers and what charges they brought against them, the bottom line was they never came with murder charges or anything like that. Basically, the charges that they presented to the grand jury were the ones that they had to work with. And that's why they only got charged for what they got charged for. Bottom line, there was no murder charge. There was no manslaughter or anything like that was presented to them to work with. Although some of them questioned why that was not the case. and they were just basically left hanging. Now, this is just one juror. Other jurors are going to come out as the week goes on, and I'm sure we'll get a better understanding of that. But bottom line is there's something afoot. We knew it. We've always known it. They covering stuff up. They lying. And that woman should not die in vain. And again, if my one particular family member that constantly brings this up, $12 million does not make up for a human life. That is not sufficient. 120 million, 120 billion would not make up for that. Not when you died because of something that was not in your control to even be in the midst of to begin with. Something that you were falsely accused of, or at least your household was falsely accused of. And now you're dead and nobody wants to take responsibility for that death. It's wrong. Justice for Breonna, period. Now, last thing before we call it the evening, folks, because like I said, this is going to be just a short show tonight. We are going to talk beware. And I want to have beware about two things. First of all, because there's a pandemic and people are not out and about, and in particular, certain offices are not open in certain parts of this state and other states. I speak of stuff like the Secretary of State or the welfare office, the unemployment office, what have you. People are using their ability to scam folks to take that to their advantage. Now, let's just say, for instance, going back to the stimulus package, that you're able to get the $1,200 again. Some people were not aware the first time that you can go somewhere and get that check cash for free. In other words, they'll take no money out whatsoever. Most banks are being set up to do that. So there have been people, because they don't have the proper identification and what have you, to properly get stuff done when things of that nature comes up, they go to the local store or the bootleg check cashing place or whatnot, and these places are charging you blasé amount of dollars to cash this check. And they're basically getting over on you because the $1,200 is supposed to come to you flat out, no extra BS. You should not be paying these 20, 50, in somebody's case, I heard they paid $200 to get that check cash. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So if you are fortunate enough to get the $1,200 or the extra for the kids or what have not, make sure that you do your homework first before you go cash that check. I understand it's a lot of money and you get to burning a hole in your pocket and all that, but save yourself some of that extra money that you shouldn't be spending on bullshit by getting it cash someplace where they just trying to get over. Another thing is, yes, some of these places set stuff up to where when the checks came, it came directly to the tax place and what have you. And they know they were supposed to distribute that money, but either they took their cut out of that money or they basically took it all. Be aware of that also, because I'm sure when it comes out, they will give you the appropriate information as to where you can go to look for your check for it to be issued. Another thing I learned this week is that if you are in the prison system, at least here in Michigan, you are eligible possibly to get that $1,200 you didn't get the first time, even though you're incarcerated. There are paperwork that you can fill out. So if you can get that information to your people and let them know you might be able to get that check, go ahead and have them fill you out the paperwork. Now, the thing is, they are allowed to take up to half of that person's check for whatever they may possibly be in jail for. So, like, for instance, if you're in jail for income tax evasion or back child support, scams, things of that nature, they're allowed to take half of your check to deal with that. But that other half, they could use to either send back to their families or to put on their books or what have you. So, if you have people incarcerated, see that they know that information and see what they can do. Like I said, I know it's like that in Michigan. I don't know if it's like that in other states, but they put that information on it, but they only have a certain amount of time to get that done. So let them know as soon as possible. Another thing is you're getting these phone calls. Now, some of these folks call and they say, okay, we have a way for you to get your money right now online. Give us your information. We'll send it to your account. The IRS will never do that. The government will never do that. It is a scam. Believe them not. Believe them not. There are people who, once they know the checks and stuff are out there, they'll be trying to come up with ways to say, no, you can't spend that money. It you belongs to us. You know, the basic credit card people and all those folks, they'll try to get you for that money too. No, that money is to stimulate your household and your pockets, not theirs. Do what you need to do with that money. Do not let people call you and tell you you have to give them the money for whatever reason. It is not true. It is a scam. And then also remember this time of year, as we get closer to Thanksgiving and Christmas, and you know it's going to be something different this year because a lot of people will probably buy their things online as opposed to going out and about and what have you. The scammers will be out there. They'll be calling. They'll be trying to get your credit card information, Social Security, all that. If it's not a site that you usually go to that's secure, like the Amazons or the perhaps the Wayfairs, the Targets, what have you, and they want additional information that these other places don't ask for, be leery. Make sure you do your homework before you just give them your info, because they may make your Christmas worse than the rest of your 2020 have been. And Lord knows we don't need that. Another thing I need people to look out for is we all on Facebook, just like we are now, and there's these games that people often want to play in regards to, you know, little stuff like, okay, one of them I saw today was, how old are you? What's the name of your first child? What street did you first live on? What was your first school and whatnot? People are using these informations to gain further information on you. Have you ever noticed that when you look up something on your phone in terms of an item that you might want to buy or something you find yourself interested in, that suddenly Facebook is showing you ads about that? Have you noticed that? There's a biorhythm, without getting too technical into it, the biorhythm that goes into it that where basically they take the Google search from your phone and use it to add to your timeline to convince you to buy things. It's their way of basically paying for Facebook, keeping it free for everybody, supposedly. And that's how they do it. They sell these biorhythms and sites to other consumer groups and whatnot so that they can in turn buy things, and they in turn use them as ads to convince you to buy things. So that is the issue. That is the issue. So nonetheless, we got that going on. So as you play these games on Facebook, please be mindful that there are people that's using that information for other things that could also lead to you getting your identity stolen or them scamming on you in some other way, shape, or form. So please be aware of that as you participate in some of those things. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and call it an evening, folks. I thank you all who have joined and those who will join in future airings of the show. Again, I apologize for yesterday. That show will probably not be available after today. We're going to go ahead and take that off because, like I said, the sound quality and all the other stuff is so crazy. But in the meanwhile, we are going to revisit that sometime soon because, like I said, domestic violence is an important thing to discuss, and we really want to make sure that everybody has that discussion with the people that they need to have that discussion with. So, hey, Will, what's going on? No playback. Not sure what that means. We'll figure that out. But nonetheless, like I said, we're ending the show for the evening. Thank you guys for joining. We'll get back to you sometime next week. In the meanwhile, there'll be other places and other faces that you'll see on my Get Off My Lawn live page. Those are the people that I'm calling part of my Nighthawk network. I'll kind of give you a better understanding of that next week and break that down to you guys to what that consists of. But until then, this is your boy Eric B. Y'all be safe out there. Wear the mask, social distance. Do what you need to do to come home the way you left. That's the bottom line on that. So until next time, y'all have a good one. Be blessed. I'm out.